Welcome to Merkaba Chakras, where we talk Buddhism in the fifth dimension.
Welcome to another episode of Merkaba Chakras. I'm your host, Vaughn Galt, and today we talk with Schumann Resonance researcher Alexis Brink of Ascension Diaries. Now, the Schumann Resonance is a scientific understanding made popular by the HeartMath Institute, the Institute of Noetic Sciences, um, and held at Princeton University originally, who used over 70 random number generators all over the world to measure the electromagnetic frequency of Earth. Initially, they wanted to understand the indigenous belief that we are connected to Earth, that she has a consciousness, and that we are all one with the consciousness of Earth, and that the original indigenous traditions belief that Earth was changing over into a new cycle, going into the fifth dimension. So they wanted to understand that and study it. And that's where that mission statement started with tracking the Schumann resonance. Now, they have over 70 random number generators all over the world measuring this, and the average Hertz frequency of Earth is 7.83. However, over a series of 2 decades, Princeton University found that the random number generators spike in its Hertz frequencies hours before a natural disaster, such as Hurricane Katrina, or a man made disaster, such as 9/11, in the particular area it is measuring. The translation, again, is that the earth is conscious and it is connected to all the living beings on it. It has evolved to more RNGs and measured by many more institutions all over the world and piqued the interest of researcher Alexis of Ascension Diaries. And so with that, Alexis, welcome to Merkaba Chakras.
Thank you, Vaughn. I'm very grateful to be here and also happy to talk about the Princeton work that they've done to this body of knowledge that I'm now becoming more aware of. So thank you for all of the work that you've done studying this already too, which I appreciate. And I love to learn from
Oh,
someone
yeah.
who knows more than I do. That has been the whole goal of why I've been poking the social media realm, because I have questions about this topic so much. And I've done it for so long now that people are asking me questions about it. And I'm like, wait, no, like I have questions and I can tell you what I found, but there's more, like I need more. And so I'm happy to have this conversation with as many people who like yourself as I can.
Yeah, it is a very fun conversation. I remember I started studying the Schumann resonance when they started the project at Princeton University back in 1999 when I graduated high school. It kind of shows my age. And I was like, oh, this is going to be fascinating because Buddhism, along with many other indigenous traditions, have this belief. We know about this belief. We know about this transition into the fifth dimension as a folklore
Right.
within the traditions. And so seeing credible institutions like the Institute of Noetic Sciences, and then I think Robert Monroe's institution also helped facilitate and fund it initially. Dr. Nelson and Dr. Reed over at Princeton University. So they started this 1999 and they kept it going all the way until about 2015, and then they still do it, but not as heavily. So they just correlate, and we'll go over that later on to look over the data that you are reporting on. But I did a I looked over the material for about 20 years and then put it in my Buddhist mandalas book just to prove the point, and then I kind of stopped. So I'm really delighted to see another generation pick up the interest and keep monitoring the ascension of Earth's consciousness along with us. So I really, really am delightful to see your work. I'm like, oh,
Well, I'm
good
grateful that
job.
you have such great context to what I've been pulled and like felt so passionately to like pursue in this life, and that you actually understand it on a level that is very intimate. I appreciate a lot, because I have to explain myself a lot to people and what I do. And it's tricky sometimes, like, well, I'm tracking the electromagnetic frequencies of the earth because the consciousness might be rising and the sun might be going through this incredible event, or has, and it's tricky. So I'm glad that we can have this
Well,
conversation.
we're going to kind of mesh two different brains. So I'm 1999 till 2015.
Okay.
And when did you start tracking it? What year do you remember?
Like 2015, and then
2015. All right. So 2015 all the way till now. So now we're gonna, it hasn't skipped a beat.
interesting.
That's perfect. The universe is amazing.
It is.
So we're going to show people that information so they can see that. But before we get into the work, let's briefly understand, how did you even get into this work? Because you said you were really attracted to it. So tell us the story for how you got into this, because this is not normal.
Sure. I went into university and went and got a psychology degree because I realized that people were out of their minds and very unstable, and I couldn't figure it out. So I tried to see if I could find some evidence on that. And through the whole degree, I found varying amounts of information here and there. And I'm now understanding more why I did the degree. My philosophy classes, all my other classes I did, helped build this knowledge and a confidence, I would say, for me to continue researching out of university the phenomena that I learned about from, I'm pretty sure, Dr. Joe Dispenza. And then he
Mhm.
also mentioned HeartMath Institute. And then I also learned more about it from, or not doctor, but the author, David Wilcock, who's also a big researcher, and he likes to talk about, and he even translates Russian science and so on. And I've learned a lot from him in his lectures. And I took a lot of their anxiety as well. And I internalized that a lot because I could tell that there was an anxiety as well building.
Mhm.
And it was right after 2012 as well, which I had woken up spiritually, I should say, before 2012 at a young age. And that's normal. A lot of people I know now are that, and who are doing this work, have had a similar experience. And that is, I felt this need to basically be of service to the earth and try and support people and myself and keep things healthier, get things healthier in general. So learning about the electromagnetic frequencies of our own planetary sphere and how they're in the range of our brain waves and how they can affect us on such an intense level, because the planet is so much bigger than we are individually. And then the sun is so much bigger than the planet. And all of that electromagnetic communication is filtering down into our lived lives. And I had no idea that there was that environmental factor at play. They talk about pollution, and they talk about your diet, and they talk about your family and even ancestral trauma, but they don't talk about the to the second buzzing and shifting of magnetic electric frequencies are happening all around us all the time, but we can't physically see them. But the symptoms of them are becoming more and more apparent to me and in my own life. And then the timing of it all was that I was becoming more sensitive. I was being aware of these events myself, being able to predict them with my own bodily or biofeedback system of using the online charts to biofeedback my bodily experiences and emotional. And I began blogging about that. And then people began giving their feedback as well. And they were having similar or opposite symptoms and all over the world, but at the same time. So even
Mhm.
data I was getting from potentially Russia was relevant for me sitting in Canada or in the USA or in Mexico or wherever I was. It was didn't
Mhm.
matter. And so the data has been so fun to chase, because I'm always like, here's the event. Please tell me what you experienced during that time. And then it pulls people into the study who are reading for the first time saying, oh my God, I had this symptom at this time and I didn't understand where it
Mhm.
came from. So I medicated, or I tried to help myself, or I went to the doctor even. But then symptoms dissipated. There's nothing coming back on test
Right.
results. How many people have ran themselves into the medical world and had nothing come back on their tests. And that causes a psychological break. If you don't find the answer, people start to eat themselves alive, I've noticed too. And the depression and the anxiety starts to get crazy. So I'm grateful that I found something so helpful to help with the state of myself and people around me and inform them and talk about it and make it a normalized thing, because it is. It's the weather of, it's just another aspect of weather that we can't physically see. And people love the weather. That's like the first thing you talk about in any language with a stranger. So I think it's extremely relevant, and I'm really excited to talk to people about it. And I have so many questions as a young person still in the pursuit of knowledge. I've only about 5 years into this study, which in a way is a loose thing because I'm not taking the parameters as seriously as I would in university, pulling all the data and everything. I'm more so remembering it all, and I'm gathering the data in a public place, which is the social media platform that I have. And I have a Facebook history, an Instagram history. I'm taking my own website history. So I am keeping data now, but it is an informal way. And I'm grateful that I've been able to come out of school, do this informally, do it alongside my spiritual awakening, but try and continue to keep the philosophy of what science is somewhat available and kind of stay true to that, because I was given that data. I was taught how to do that in school. So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah. Now, what did you go to? You went to school for psychology. Now, do you
Yeah.
also work as well as doing this as your kind of your hobby?
No, I moved out of that world because there was
Mm,
too many restrictions on
mm,
my passion of study, and
mm,
basically the entire economy crashed after I
mm,
again and again and again. And it just became apparent to me that it had to be make your own job
right,
and work for yourself at whatever cost, because it's the only reliable thing in the world and right now. And and as well as the spiritual side, is if you
right.
give with true compassion and loving and honesty and generosity, that you'll receive that back, because that's just how it works. And I've received it back that way. It's been a struggle to take that path, and I've experienced homelessness, and I've experienced being
Mm,
completely broke for years. And it doesn't matter, because the passion I have for this somehow didn't phase me. It was
mm-hmm.
like I could continue this study in any way, shape, or form. I always somehow had the means to at least continue the study.
That's good.
And I'm enjoying life as it is. I'm enjoying the community it's built. And now we're moving in that direction of community building and so on, because that's the study.
Yeah, yeah.
It's been
It's
like find the people and then bring them together, because then you get more data out of that. It's more of a data rich experience anyway.
yeah,
So
yeah. Well, and that's fun. I love following and seeing the work that you are doing and carrying on. So I'm excited that
thank
another
you.
generation is carrying the torch. So so
I'm
I've been
trying to do it
tracking.
respectfully to the previous generations too. So I
Oh, of
appreciate
course.
that.
It all combines together. So I've been tracking the Schumann Resonance of Earth done by the HeartMath Institute at Princeton University since 1999 all the way up to 2555, which is the Buddhist era date for the transition into the fifth dimension,
Right,
according to Buddhism and many indigenous cultures who were keen on the changeover of the Earth's precessional cycle.
right,
And that 2555 Buddhist era date is 2012, which people can remember back to that date.
right,
Now you can look up all of their work predicted hours before an event, impending event happened on the website. So I'm gonna pull up some sites and we're gonna kind of talk about it a little bit and look at some of this data so people can understand how does measuring the Schumann resonance of Earth's quote, quote, heartbeat, how does that relate to people and living beings living on her? How does that affect them? So let me pull over this information. I'm going to share my screen.
okay.
Share my screen. Share my screen. All right. Okay, do you see my screen?
I see it.
Okay, there we go. And there's your, put this over here. All right. So the first, I put 3 images up, and these links, everybody, if you're listening to this on any of the 5 video sharing sites or on the 65 podcast websites, they're in the description, so you can click on them yourself and you can go through them. So the original source that I have been following since 1999 is the Global Consciousness Project. And like I said in the intro, the Global Consciousness Project is also, they also worked with the Institute of Noetic Sciences. I think Dr. Monroe of the Monroe Institute also had a hand in helping fund it and get it started. And then it is held at Princeton University. And basically what it was is, you see these numbers everywhere. These are what, when they initially started, this was the random number generators. They work like a seismology. So just like when they track potential earthquakes, the similar seismology technology is used in these sites. And so that's how they measure the frequency of Earth in what we now know as the Schumann resonance, as her heartbeat. So these are always going on. Before 2015, they put a lot of funding, and it used to be really, really easy. But what you guys can do at any time is, let me go over, this is where formal result on the far right. I'm clicking on formal results. And basically, this is from 1998 to 2015. That's when they kind of stopped doing a daily monitoring. And basically, you can go through, and Dr. Robert Nelson and a couple other doctors as well, they would look at the data that the RNGs would set off. So whenever Earth spikes her numbers into high frequencies, it usually happens within hours before an impending event is going to happen in that specific area. And what they found over 20 years of research is that it is exact science. It happens all the time. It's not, it's like an indicator. So back in, I'm
And
looking
it's
at
not
the,
all bad things. It looks, I see Christmas Eve is scoring super high and New Year's Eve or New Year's.
mhm.
That's cool.
Yeah, so Earth, and remember, the Schumann resonance is quote quote Earth's heartbeat. So she's responding to things that's happening on her body, like tsunamis and earthquakes, and she's also responding to things that's happening on global events. Now, she's not going to respond to certain global events as compared to others. That part is still up in the air. We don't know why she responds to some and not others. But that also proves the point that Princeton University found um, doing 2 decades of research, is that um, human beings are affected by the earth. So we're all connected. We're connected to the earth. Earth's connected to us. Everything is one. And 20 years of information is enough information to go, yes, that is true. So for instance, you got the embassy bombings is set up at 50 minutes before, and you can click on them and they'll go over the research if you want to look at it more. But you have the different bombings, U.S. airstrikes back in, this was 1998, and it just goes all the way. We have New Year's Eve, New Year's in Times Square. It goes off because it's feeling the love energy of people as well as the sadness of people as well. And you can kind of scroll down to all of the events that Princeton University and the affiliates that support the project have been tracking since 1998. So it goes on to earthquake in Turkey in 1991. I'm just going for people on the podcast. I'm scrolling through. It goes through election and how that affects people in 2000, inaugurations, world peace meditations. They track that. Um, and it just keeps on going, event after event after event, just to prove the point that we are connected to Earth and Earth is connected to us. And when the biggest magnet on Earth, which is Earth herself, has a kind of a heart palpitation, it affects everybody living on her. And because she is connected to us, she's going to feel our collective anxiety hours before the event happens because we're all connected to each other. So if, for example, 9/11 was going to happen, they monitored it 4 hours beforehand because the Earth was already having a huge surge in a reaction, like, oh my God, something's going to happen to the collective, and everybody already who are connected was already feeling that anxiety, that heart palpitation, that depression, whatever. We're like animals, and like animals in the wild, they all start running for the hills before a tsunami comes. We are the exact same way. We're just too stupid to recognize that. But the research has shown over and over again that humans, whether we recognize it or not, are connected to each other. They even measured the Michael Jackson Memorial Day, and that really affected the consciousness. So it goes on and on and on. I'm going to scroll all the way down, and people can go to the links. And it ends at 2015. So they can go to the links. That's more than enough research all those years to track that we are connected to the earth, and the earth is connected to us. And like animals, we do feel the collective anxiety of things that's going to happen before it happens. So we all are psychic, whether we know it or not. And um, the Princeton
Right.
University research has proven those facts for the last 20 years. Now, what they have done, I'm showing on the website too, is on the top right of the main page, you have new reports. So they still keep it going, even though they stopped doing the daily monitoring by 2015. They still keep it going. And so when there's huge spikes or events is happening that is setting off on all the RNGs, they will go and take a look at that. And it still correlates to events that's happening with us. They're just not doing it as heavy as they used to. So the new reports go over the coronavirus crisis, which when the lockdowns happened worldwide, the RNGs just went off. Like everybody was feeling the collective anxiety. George Floyd and BLM, Peace Day in September 21, election moments, Capitol insurrection, and the Chauvin trial verdict. So there's still some major events that are happening that's being tracked and still setting off the RNGs at Princeton University. So people can kind of go through that if they want to, but that's where the initial project had begun. If you click on more map information, if you guys are watching this on the video one, you'll see what I'm doing. All these arrows are where the RNGs are located at all over the world. Okay, there's about 70 all over the world. There's one in Siberia, one in Russia, one in Italy, and many of them around the US, obviously. But you can kind of go through and see it's not as easy to read as it used to. It used to kind of tell you the numbers and it was easy to read. But if you guys wanted to look at the real-time data and kind of geek out on the RNGs and what they're tracking at Princeton, you can click on that link. So fast forward to 2015, when Alexis picked it up, Alexis is looking at the daily spikes
Yeah.
that Earth makes on 2 websites, and those websites are on the description, you guys. So the first one is the Space Observation System in Russia, and the second website is done in Italy.
Hmm.
Okay, so so let's talk about the one in Russia. So this website, it's all in Russian. So can you speak about this a little bit, Alexis, and kind of um, point out some anomalies that you have been noticing since 2015?
Sure. I'd be happy to. I wasn't aware, like I mentioned earlier, of the Princeton project, which is interesting that you kind of ended in 2015 and then I randomly picked up this Russian source. So I found
There
this
are no
source, I'm pretty
accidents. There are
sure.
no accidents.
I know. We're on a team. So I found this resource, I think, from a Facebook friend who posted this in or one of the groups I was in, and I was on it like immediately, like, give me this link. I need this right now. And then I pull it up and it's entirely in Russian. So I had to get Google to translate it for me. So this particular chart has been one of the lights of my life, as well as it's been a challenge of my life as well some days. And the problems is really a lot of things are lost in translation with this source, but it's getting translated with very loose, I would say unrestricted glee on the internet, and that's cool, and that's an interesting thing that I haven't seen before with data, and it's been fun to kind of watch it grow wings and live a life of its own. But I've also been an active part of the conversation of kind of bringing it down, being like, hey, there actually is true knowledge in here that is going to help make a real easy step for a logical mind to understand that electromagnetic frequencies can affect their brain waves and that their lived lives. So this particular resource measures the electromagnetic frequencies between just above 0 Hertz, which is a rotation per second, which is how you measure a frequency. So 0 Hertz obviously is nothing, and also a dead brain. So we don't worry about 0, but everything afterwards becomes interesting until about 40 Hertz, which is this particular chart's range. Now, our brainwaves, our delta to gamma brainwave states, they all can lie within a 0 to 40 Hertz range. And so to watch this particular chart and watch the amplitude of those frequencies getting louder and quieter on a diurnal basis, which is from day to night, which is a normal thing to see, and then additional bouts of amplitude that are harder to explain with the diurnal cycle, which could involve a solar flare impacting the Earth or a CME. It could also involve something that is being hidden from humanity, but is going on. And I've seen that as well, seen evidence of that for years, that there is a secret narrative going on, and we'll wake up, those of us who are not involved in the war, perhaps, wake up in our beds and we're like, we felt like we were fighting a war last night. And you go on to the particular sources I have, and you see that the electromagnetic frequencies in our dream state area or whatever were very much disturbed and very loud. And you wonder what's going on. So there's been so many directions you can take this data, but I've noticed some major things, which is there's obviously a study going on with human behavior, and that this particular knowledge that these electromagnetic frequencies can affect us are very well known. And that has also moved me into the study of what HARP is capable of, which is stimulating from the ground this area. So over another country using radiation and stimulating their brain waves and making them feel crazy just by bouncing it off of this ionosphere layer, which is permeable in a way, but it's electric. So it is involved with lightning, and it is involved with space, and it's very far out, but it's the beginning of the process that keeps us in, and it keeps us protected from dangerous radiation in space as well. So I've noticed there are moments of very high amplitude that are hard to explain, and then there's some that are really easy to explain because they're within minutes or within hours of a solar flare, an hour within a solar flare that's worldwide reported, which we had a few days ago. And then there's events where there is solar flaring going on, but these particular resources have been shut off and they're not publicly available all of the sudden, which is funny because that's when the traffic would pick up, because people are getting the correlation between solar weather and the Schumann resonance. And so I've been involved in stirring up that interest as well. I know it. And we all go over there, and I have people texting me saying that the Schumann resonance chart in Russia is off, or this is technically not the Schumann resonance chart, but it does measure them. It specifically have, which is a part of the sources, measures the variance of the average frequency over time. It'll measure that as well with this source, which is awesome. But when they turn it off, or they just don't upload any data but allow the chart to run over time, so there's no data showing up, but it's running through time, so it just shows up as a big black nothing. It just shows up with black. There's nothing, there's no data being fed, and we see those a lot. We've also recently seen where the website is actually just completely stopped loading, which is very rare, at least for the study I've been doing. The site has stopped loading and it was almost 4 days, which happened just a month ago.
Mhm.
And it was during the events and the news of a termination event of our sun to enact and begin solar cycle 25. So all of the Schumann charts and the NASA, also NASA satellites were also under maintenance during that same time. So this data collection has been showing me that in a way that it's not a conspiracy either, that there is management going on from
Mhm.
places like potentially like NASA or just governments in general. And that's why
Right.
Space Force and moving into SpaceX and space in general, which is traversing through the ionosphere and also the entire space above our heads, basically, they're trying to say there is management here. There is things to be unveiled. There's confidentiality here. And I'm seeing the inconsistencies in the data over the years. And now I'm gathering evidence. People are witnessing this and realizing this about our world. So it's been a multiple tiered study of opening people's eyes to the majesty of living in our environment, of being on this earth, walking the surface, having the protection from the sun to such an incredible degree, and that the earth is breathing and moving and changing. There's systems where all of this energy is being dissipated and released, and it comes through us and we can feel it, and some people can feel it more than others. And it's a part of being alive and walking this planet. And it's very visceral, it's very physical, and then it can get really mental and it can get very spiritual. And it's been a very rewarding area to look at. So this, I can get a spiritual meaning out of this particular white band on this
Yeah, let's talk
chart.
about this band here, because
Yeah,
this is very fascinating. So, just for people who are like, what is a Hertz frequency, Vaughn, and how is that related to consciousness and our connection to Earth? So,
right,
you guys, Hertz is basically a measurement of frequency. So, it's kind of like, it's like if you take the analogy, and I've said this in book interviews before, if you take this analogy of TV, okay, TV is measured in hertz. So if you have an old TV that has 60 hertz, it changes its frame, it refreshes its frames 60 times per second. Okay, it's an older TV. So you can kind of see the pixelation, you can kind of see the changeover
right,
from transition from image to image. But if you go to a higher hertz TV that has maybe 120 or 160 hertz, it will it will refresh 120 or 160 times so much faster. The picture quality is crisper. It refreshes so much faster that you honestly almost like blink and you don't see the changeover from screen to screen. It's just like a nice smooth transition into a higher quality hertz.
right.
That's how you understand hertz. It's just basically changing how fast it will refresh. Now, here is how it relates to consciousness. And Alexis, add in feedback as well to clarify for people, because this can go over a lot of people's head.
Yeah,
So, so in terms of consciousness, we know in science, and you guys can all look at the scientific information in Buddhist mandalas, but we know in science that with right now they're not fully able to measure the heart frequencies. They're still working that, but they can measure the brain. So with
right.
EEG brain scans. And what they found in meditation research with many prominent monks and nuns in Buddhism and in other traditions as well, and even with advanced meditators, is what they found is that the human brain can reach up to 11 dimensions of consciousness. So consciousness is not out there, consciousness is within you. You yourself create those dimensions. And with our modern science, we're able to measure that we can go up to 11 dimensions of consciousness in our brains so far. The other
What?
thing that's true.
There's
Exactly.
11 things on the y-axis of this too, which is very interesting. Very interesting.
Oh, more material for you, Alexis. Carry the torch, baby.
I will.
But anyways, and on your podcast, I'd be happy to come in and fill in the other stuff too if you want to. But anyways, so just to give you a framework for Alexis's work, because it's brilliant work that she's carrying, and I love it. So the human brain can reach up to 11 dimensions of consciousness. Also, what they found in meditation research and doing EEG brain scans is that the brain will fluctuate in different frequencies, but we can go up to gamma brain waves. Now, different people are like, when you get into gamma brain waves, which is the highest that we know of so far that we can go into, which is advanced meditators, Buddhist monks and nuns. Energy healing is in gamma. Gamma is the highest so far that we know, and when they get into gamma, what they found in meditation research, scientifically proven over and over again, is that the picture quality is higher, the consciousness level is higher. That's the same frequency when they measure energy healing, and when healing is done on the body and in the consciousness, the person who's facilitating is tapping into the gamma brainwave frequency. So there's a lot of ways we can go into gamma, whether it's through energy healing, whether it's through meditation, hypnosis, whatever the modality. Gamma is, in Buddhism, Christ consciousness. It's the crystalline consciousness of higher dimensional access to the main source in everybody and everything, which is what many people would call God, Allah, whatever they call it.
Mhm.
And well, we're not stuck there all the time because we're coming back having our own individual experience. But that's how, when you're looking at the Schumann resonance and you're looking at measuring the Earth's consciousness, and she's going to these higher frequencies, how is these higher frequencies connected to our consciousness, and how does our consciousness and Earth's consciousness go to the fifth dimension and higher dimensions? Okay, it's because when we go up these higher frequencies, these Hertz frequencies, we are tapping into that gamma brain wave. We're tapping into the fifth dimension and higher within our consciousness. Not everybody's going to do it, but many people are. And it doesn't mean that people who can only get to third dimensional consciousness or fourth dimensional consciousness is not going to be able to be in the fifth dimension. If you graduate to a college level consciousness, you don't completely negate your elementary years. It comes with you. Okay.
Mhm.
So that, I just wanted to explain that, because people are going to be like, okay, I'm looking at this science here, and how does this relate to us being in the fifth dimension, and how does it relate to consciousness, and how does it relate to our holographic reality being a higher pixelated, higher Hertz frequency? Everything's much brighter.
Right.
Everything is much more connected, et cetera, all those things. And that's why when I started and I went to the global consciousness, on the far right, they actually did a film on the fifth dimension, which was the premise for why they started this whole thing, to see if the indigenous belief that we are transitioning to a fifth dimensional consciousness is true. And they have shown 20 years of evidence that it is true. That's where it's coming from. So I wanted to give people that background so that they understand, okay, there's actual logic when we're talking about this stuff. Because this is
Oh
Buddhism in
yeah,
the fifth.
and with the gamma as well, our gamma brainwave state, it's in the, basically after you get past like around 25 hertz in the brainwaves, that's where they're like, okay, you're kind of moving into the gamma area now.
Mm-hmm.
After 30, for sure. After 30 hertz, you're like fully in there. And this particular chart, we do get to see amplified information in that area. So right at the, I would say at the bottom
Right
section
here.
of this chart, horizontally here, that
This
whole
is
kind
the
of bottom
Hertz.
area. No, though, that's time.
That's
And then
time.
on the
Okay.
left side, on the left up and down is hertz. So at the
Okay.
bottom of that list is 40. And
Mm-hmm.
then so 30 to 40 is kind of like the bottom horizontal area of this whole chart. And so you can see last night, for example, around, I mean, a little while ago, but you can see that there is some brighter color in that lower part of that lower third of that chart, which is awesome, because one thing which I think is cool about this study is that the thought or the information about entrainment, which is if you are at least capable of hosting a specific frequency, like you're a tuning fork, but we're more flexible than tuning forks. We can host lots of different frequencies through us and perceive them, even though not as much as other animals. But we get information in, and if we have the instruments to shake with that vibration, we will, and
Mm-hmm.
we will do it to the intensity And we will also, if the thing that's making us shake that much is louder than our own bodies or our own environment, our body will begin to shake in alignment with that new energy source, and we will begin to become entrained. So if the
And entrainment is
earth
just
or
connecting to Earth's frequency. We will
yeah,
harmonize.
it definitely can. And
Mhm.
we are entrained to it all day long, really. We
Mhm.
live in the soup that's here. And then the sun is like, boom, here's some extra spice for your
Right.
soup. And the soup gets super hot all of a sudden. And we are like, oh, and people want to know what that is. And the brainwave state also can change. So if all of a sudden the gamma brainwaves or the gamma frequencies, I should say, that bring us into gamma brainwaves, the frequencies that can bring us into gamma brainwaves, which is around 30 to 4 into 30 and up, basically. If that gets louder than our own mind in our environment, if that gets louder than our planet in our environment, then we will immediately just automatically get into that gamma state of thinking and of feeling, just like those who are extremely skilled in meditation can do any day of the week, at least on a good, when they're feeling it, they can go and deeply experience that amazing experience. I'm pretty sure you can also take psychedelic substances and they will also speed up your
Right.
brainwave rate to also access these speeds, which is why people have such amazing experiences, because they're perceiving way more and their
Right.
brain's working way harder. And so the idea potentially that I was chasing with the study was that there was going to be an event from the sun that would cause a global gamma brainwave state, and all people will have these awakenings and feel this feeling and this amazingness, this connection to source in a way they've never felt it before. And it's just an environmental thing, just like a thunderstorm, and then it'll pass, but it'll change people forever. And that may be connecting to that change of the age. And I was wondering if there might be a physical environmental thing that would happen to correlate with the spiritual understanding, which is also the path of empowerment, of you doing it yourself through
Right.
personal
Right.
work. So it's
So
interesting. There's a
yeah,
global option and there's a personal option.
there is a personal option. If you want to stay 3D in a 5D world, you're welcome to do that.
But
Consciousness
no
will let you
fun.
do. No, you will struggle a little harder. Things will be a little harder for you to,
Yeah, we
but
will.
it can be much easier. But they will allow you to do that, because they're very forgiving.
Yeah.
But if you upgrade to a 5D consciousness and higher in a 5D physical world, then things happen in synchronicity much easier and so forth. But let's talk about this chart here. Um, so when people are looking at this, I actually was looking at this back in August of 2020, and there was three straight days when you have this green bar, and it just kind of went on for like 3 days. This mass green bar just kind of stuck there. People were like, "Is it broken? Is it not broken?" What do you think that is when it does this like huge just chunk of the same color in the graph?
And you were saying it was green specifically?
Yeah, it was green for 3 straight days.
Well, in my opinion, just from understanding the mechanics of the chart, it's just a specific amplitude that's being hit that's showing up as green in the
Oh.
intensity scale. So green is like halfway between the blue and the white potentially. So I noticed that the amplitude for this thing to show up as a white color, the amplitude has to get to about a 20, and so the green might be a 10. And so if you, it is strange though that all of the frequencies from 0 to 40 were being amplified to that like medium degree for that much time. That is
Hmm.
weird. And it
Yeah.
should have more of a pulsing effect with the day and night sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that is strange. It's like over those 3 days, we were having this almost this incubated into it in situation, which also makes me suspicious.
Suspicious of what? What is suspicion of?
I mean, I've understood that it's actually not that hard to manipulate the frequencies, and that the technology, the pursuit of technology has been basically focused on that. When they realized that it was all about frequency, that was it. Like the frequency was everything. So to have the most energy to emit the most powerful frequency is basically the game, it seems like. So they've been launching devices that are now hugging right next to the ionosphere all day, everywhere, charging and discharging and doing all this crazy stuff. So they potentially
is
can
they? Who
create
is
this
they?
blanket. Well, I would say the competing governments, the space programs, and private enterprises as well.
And what's the end goal? What is the goal of trying to
Mind control.
Mind control of who?
Of the unsuspecting populace. But it could go in a, it could, what I'm seeing also is that there is a benevolence there, that there is a protective mechanism. When you infringe your will too much on a population, there is a force of God that comes down on you. And so I'm watching, in a way, potentially this strange dance. And I believe there was technology created, like a net, to keep us out of range and out of sync with nature for long enough, that now that net, they're trying to take this net away, I think. And the mutations that we've experienced have made us incompatible with nature. So there's this gradual process of us being reacclimated to nature while this net is being changed. And I'm trying to figure out what that is.
Let me ask you something about that.
Okay.
Who has more power? Is it the frequency of Earth herself, or is it the nets of these artificial tech corporations that you say are putting
I think they're using
satellites
the
in
Earth.
they're using the Earth?
They're using her.
Okay, so they're trying to send so are you saying they're trying to send a certain frequency to
I think they're
correlate with the
manipulating.
Earth's frequency and get to what's the frequency they're trying to get to?
I would say that I think that what's been happening is, in a way, it's kind of like a farm-like situation where they want people to wake up, they want people to go into beta brainwave right away, go to work, and then go into another state with the television sets, basically, and keep themselves hypnotized in certain brainwave areas. So they aren't, I would say, because there's so many of us, if all of us started having our free will of brainwaves, they couldn't control anything anymore. It would be
Okay.
too many extraneous variables. So they're trying to keep the collective consciousness moving in this scheduled pattern so they can keep doing their, they can be the ones who are the extraneous values and
Okay.
and
Let me table
minimize
this concept of the Thay, because I really want to investigate your understanding of the Thay. But real
the
quick,
fae.
yeah, just real quick. So we're
Okay.
looking at the Russian, and you have these white spots here.
Uh-huh.
What is your thoughts on these white spots where it looks like a splash of white coming down the graph?
Right. Those are the louder moments of those frequencies. So
Mm.
it's when there is, and they tend to also be diurnal. So when the sun all of a sudden is hitting the Russian station, potentially, the amplitude of the Schumann resonance in that area goes up because the ionosphere is being stimulated by the sun again. So it has a bit of a burst every morning or dawn or whatever in Russia. I've
Right.
noticed. So, but it's
So
the
do
darkest
people
part of our
feel,
day.
is it? So do people feel like anxiety or, some kind of
They
feeling
can.
off during these times?
What's cool too is that it seems like the most potent that they find, the most potent frequency out of most of these occurrences is that primary Earth Schumann resonance frequency, which means
Mm-hmm.
that it is the mechanism of our Earth that's the loudest one or the most prominent one
Mm-hmm.
when we're getting radiation from the sun. So that's cool and that's natural. But sometimes frequencies that are the third Schumann resonance or beta or a gamma brainwave,
Mm-hmm.
one day I'll notice that the amplitude of that specific frequency is way higher than the baselines, and it's out of nowhere. What causes that? What is shooting 25 hertz so much louder than our own planet's buzzing? What is that? And I don't know. I'm trying to understand.
Kind of like a surge. Okay, well, that's something to investigate.
Right.
So okay, so what are your recommendations for people who are feeling these surges in their Schumann resonance on Earth? So they're feeling the magnetic surge. What do you recommend they do to deal with these spikes in a healthy manner?
I would say instead of trying to maybe ignore them, to embrace them and realize that you are now a part of this particular study or evolution of mankind, and for you to when you're struggling, especially if the science part isn't your thing, you don't care to follow, but the symptoms keep showing up, it may help you manage your symptoms better, even if you realize, hey, I get a symptom a day after a coronal mass ejection. So when I watch the solar news, I can tell a day before when I'm going to potentially have a symptom, so I can change my entire schedule in a less stressful manner, like, oh, I better take that day off, or oh, I better wait till the afternoon to start working just in case, or who cares? Like, people have
Right.
chosen to take this information in their own self-care a lot. Some people way more seriously than others, because they have fibromyalgia. And when the electromagnetic frequencies are getting loud, their nervous system starts to hurt. And so they're taking medication to regrow their their nerves and from all the damage they've incurred. And I've got people all over the place. I've got super psychic people as well who are fully on board with this and following along incredibly, and they still ask me questions, and a lot of them are far more advanced than I am psychically, and they're still coming back to me for resource and information. So it's helped me be an active part of the community of people who are really trying to serve the community as well, and use their
Right.
insights and their gifts of sensitivity to be supportive and help people with their own spiritual journeys. And so it's been great.
Right. So on the screen, I actually flipped over to the Italian site that you use to monitor as well. And this is
Right.
also in the description as well as these 3 links, so you guys can follow along the work that Alexis Buck does. So this is the Italian one, and it is in English, so you can understand it. But I found it interesting because they used their own technology they set up, and Lex is going to explain that, but it's located in this area, kind of like a northern Italy, right before the boot goes off. But if you look at the site
Yeah,
with Princeton University, it is in the same spot.
there's a few spots right near there.
Yeah, same spot of Italy. So the first thing I wanted to know is, when we were discussing, you were saying that when they set up these measuring instruments, they're typically placed in high portal points or magnetic points on Earth. Can you explain that a little bit for people?
It's potential, yes, that there are areas, obviously areas in the world that are naturally vortexing energy, which are mountains and volcanoes, and also indents and ley lines and so on. And I've read that it's tricky also to set up stations in these areas, because they have sometimes their own magnetic anomalies. So
Mm-hmm.
their readings don't reflect the planet as much. They're reflecting their own unique spot. So I'm assuming they'd have to set this up somewhere where it's genuinely like pretty quiet, but it is also nestled right up against a mountain range, which is very interesting. So they would still have they would still be attracting magnetically more data, basically, from
Right.
the field of our planet and everything. So they may get more excitable readings than other locations, but
Right.
still, I have people who follow this religiously who live in the area, and they're like, this is the day and I know it. And then the charts are going nuts, and they're flat out in their bed. They can't move. They're tired. Their thoughts are scattered. That happens a lot. It's a lot of scattered thought. And to be honest, it's interesting because the Schumann resonance hangs out right between theta and alpha brainwaves. So
Mm-hmm.
that's basically when you're dreaming and into kind of daydreaming in that area. So you're not really working on anything, but you're pontificating the world, and you're experiencing things, and you may also see things with your third eye, see things like fly around, and you're in a bit of a dazed state in a way. And so that is a natural state. That is the state of humans awake, and what the earth does to us every day when we wake up.
Yeah.
It's, you're just sitting in that state, and they're like, whoa. So the fact that we've been pushed so hard to go into the other states and stay there, like working hard and anxiety and scheduling, and the beta brainwave state is meant to help us, but it's been abused. I think it's been used
Right.
to abuse our
You're
work
in
ethic.
beta. You're in beta.
Yeah,
You're in beta. That's basically it. You're still
Exactly.
work in progress. You know, the brain waves, the thing with the brain waves is that it does fluctuate because people
Oh yeah,
fluctuate depending on the thing.
all
But
day.
so what you're saying is that in your research, the Schumann resonance, the frequency of Schumann resonance is like in theta to gamma,
Theta
right?
to alpha.
Theta to alpha. Okay.
Yeah.
So kind of like, so sometimes it hits
But yeah,
gamma.
gamma
That's when
too.
it
I
that's
it
when
would
it's really
say,
high,
yeah,
and then
because
it
there's
goes
multiple Schumann resonances.
right,
It like hits itself and then it doubles and then it hits itself again around our
right.
planetary
It's
conductor
like
or
a
whatever.
heartbeat. It's like a heartbeat. You don't stay in the same frequency
A rhythm.
consistently. It's like a rhythm. It goes up and down, up and down. But sometimes when she has a huge spike, it's kind of like a huge heart palpitation or like, oh my God, I'm feeling very
And
excited about
sometimes
something or whatever.
I like to think about it too sometimes as the brain waves as well are all on top of it. It's like you can see the
Right.
rhythm, the heartbeat day and night, and then you can see the thoughts. It's like, whoa, everybody just had an idea, like New Year's Eve, like whatever it is, and
Yeah.
or who knows, or the sun sent us an idea or sent us something, and now
Yeah.
there's a thought. There's been a conversation between our planet and the sun, and
And
you can.
us.
It's so
So
beautiful and it's
yes.
simple.
Yeah. So it sounds as if the Russian website that's monitoring the frequency and the Italian website is monitoring the frequency and the USA website, well,
Mhm.
although it's a little harder to read, is also still
HeartMath.
monitoring the frequency. It sounds like when the sun and the earth, they when they correlate and they have their spikes, it is hitting us as well. So again, it
Yeah.
continues to prove the point that we're all connected and we're all kind of meandering in our frequency and
Yeah.
our harmonics at the same exact time, where she's affecting us, we're affecting her. She affects us more than we affect her, but some
Yeah.
humans like to think that we have control of her, but um usually that's continue to prove wrong over especially when huge uh, events on the planet like tsunamis and earthquakes, you know, supersede any of the human events. So, like I said,
Right.
the Heart Math and Global Consciousness Project at Princeton don't necessarily know why some human events trigger her and some don't. So
Right.
she has her own mind. She's gonna do what she wants to do, and she doesn't care if you poke a prod or whatever, because it's not always gonna always gonna get what you want. Because otherwise, it will be consistent. Whenever um, you know human technology try to peak certain frequencies with Earth,
Yeah.
it's not consistent. You're not always going to get a response. So,
I've noticed that too. Even from the
yeah.
sun, I've noticed it. And I've been like,
Hmm.
are they turning that data off? Like, are they hiding that for some reason? Or did she just not respond? And I've wondered these things myself.
I think, this is my opinion. There's that, every guy will know this, like, it's so hard to understand women.
Right. Yeah. It's
It's a
like,
mystery
not
of the
today,
universe.
honey.
No. I'll play with you guys a little bit, but then, so
Yeah.
that's the fun part of the conversation. So let's explain because I want to move on and continue the conversation, but let's explain the websites really quick. So
Okay.
what is this that we're looking at in the Italy? So this is string here, and then down here is there's more of the graphs with
Right.
and then but I want to explain how they measure this. So there's this image of a chicken and some basic
Yeah.
tech that they set up in front on top
They
of this
have that
ground.
too. Yeah,
Yeah,
they
what is
have a
that?
magnetic thing, I think, for the ground and to deal more with the magnetics. And then they have those antennas hanging up higher to get the electric currents and stuff. So they're measuring both. And I more so look at the electric stuff on this website because I've noticed the magnetics. I would say right now they aren't as I would say they don't outperform the electric as much, which makes sense because magnetic is more internal and electric is more external. So
Hmm.
for research, it's easier to look at the electric. But if you scroll up a little bit, it's funny because people will say that these measure the Schumann resonance in my community. And I have to be like, well, actually, they measure a much broader. You can go up more, a broader range, basically. Go up a little more, go up to those red lines. There we go. And so this is daily. This is a daily recap. This is more like a daily calendar. So it'll give you a little sneak peek. This one will give you a little bit zoomed in view of the behavior between 0 and 100 hertz and the decibel levels that it gets to. And pretty much
Yeah.
all day long, every day in Italy, there's also a background feed of 50 hertz because that's what they run their electricity on, I guess, is 50 hertz in Italy. So there's this constant background buzz on this chart all day, which is also concerning. You're like, okay, that interesting. There's
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
consistent 50 hertz. And what brainwave does that actually bring you to? Well, that does bring you to a gamma. So
Gamma. Yeah.
interesting.
So everybody who's not in gamma is gonna feel like,
Go to Italy. Yeah, exactly. They're going to
yeah,
feel this.
it's kind of like whatever.
There'll be a competing buzz and so on in your environment. But then you can see here that it's the amplitude. It looks messy. It looks almost wet, like a wave, like it looks weird. And it's from this one. So you can see 0 to 100. It's clearly amplifying that whole range.
But
And then
here's
if you
the
scroll
hertz.
up, you can see an even larger range in this one. And you could still see in this huge range.
This is the hertz 200 hertz. Is that correct?
That's right. And
So up to
there's
200.
two graphs in this one, right? So the
It's
first one on the
1400
bottom there
hertz.
goes
1400
up to
hertz.
14. And this
Is
one
it
goes up to
1400 or
14,000.
14,000 hertz? Really?
Yeah. So it gives you a big
Oh,
window. And it's still, you can still see how there's a disturbance in a very large range of the low frequencies of Italy right now. Like, oh, that happened a few hours ago. There's still disturbance, but what caused that? Could it have been a lightning storm? Yeah, it could have been. And maybe it
okay.
was.
So let me get this straight. So the in Italy, they set up how they measure the Hertz frequency of Earth's Schumann resonance. They set up these antenna things to kind of measure the electromagnetics of the
Yeah.
air
Yeah.
and the Earth. Okay. And so all this data that's being correlated is coming from that setup, and they're measuring the Hertz frequency up to 14,000. Is that correct?
Yep.
That's really high. But it's not always going to be up 14,000 because most of it is really hovering low at
Yeah.
like probably below 100, probably like a 50, 60,
Which
something
is
like.
why the Russians it seems like they were like, oh, we'll just do 0 to 40 hertz. And the Italians were
Yeah.
like, let's do 0 to 16,000.
Yeah. So the previous the Russian website, it goes up to 0 to 40 because that's where most of the daily activity is.
Yeah.
So because otherwise it'd be boring because it doesn't really hit the high frequencies. But if you compare it to the Italian website, they're just going all the way up to whatever it's going to go to. And luckily, it's not always going to be in those high frequencies for very
No.
long. So
Right.
you have 1200 hours. Is it 14? This is the time, right?
Right.
1200, 1400. So 1600, which is like 4 p.m. Pacific time. Okay, so it's going military time. So you can see in the graph on the red part, that's when she's spiking. It's going up these higher hertzes, but
Yeah, it's
a little
going up on a higher
amplitude,
decibel level.
high decibel level in
Yeah.
hertz, right?
The decibels, well, pick whatever hertz you want to look at, and then you can see the amplitude behind it.
Yeah, so on the top left is the data. So this is 7/7/2021. Frequency is 0 to 15,000 hertz. So they're measuring up to 15,000 hertz. That's amazing. When I was monitoring this up to 2015, they didn't go up to these higher hertzes. So she's really going for it.
It's nice to see a bigger range because you can see how much activity is going on in other areas of that the Russians aren't looking. But if you tilt your head and then you read the decibels, you can see that they start to peak. And it's funny because this stuff is happening beneath the ability of our audible hearing, these readings. But you can see that how much beneath the audible levels, and our audible levels are obviously above 0 decibels. But
is
sometimes
this consistent every day? I mean, do you find some kind of consistent pattern where like at like 2:30 or 3 o'clock, she's hitting the 14,000 hertz frequency? Are you seeing like a regular pattern of time
I
when she?
haven't
Okay, you
yet.
haven't.
I haven't, and I've started watching this one more seriously the last 2 years, I would say, so I don't have as much experience with it, but
Yeah,
there
that'll
is
be
some
interesting.
interesting patterns.
Because in terms of hertz, if she's having the higher frequencies at these specific red junctures where it's really, really super high, that's perfect timing to do a meditation, or
Right.
to, if you notice, if you guys are tracking in real time, like with Alexis, and you notice she's hit the high red peaks in the Italian website, that's when you just stop and just put out an intention, like, okay, let's
Right.
manifest this, because that is you're riding the waves of these higher levels that she's bringing in.
I
So
think
you can
that's
take it.
also why I'm doing the work, is taking advantage of those moments too and having some intention behind it, which is cool.
Yeah. So like I said at the beginning, in Buddhism and many indigenous cultures, we've already been in 5D
Right.
consciousness since unity consciousness since 2012 or 2555 Buddhist era, same time.
Yeah.
However, if you want to be 3D in a 5D world, you're welcome to do that. Everything's going to come up for you much faster in these frequencies. So all your
Yeah.
little demons and all your little issues, they're going to come up for you much faster, much more creatively. So you can make it heaven for you, or you can make it hell for you every single day, because it's just going to bring up more of what you are. And especially during these times, it'd be interesting to see, like,
Yes.
when they have these spikes,
It
what's going
amplifies
on.
the experience of
It amplifies. It's
everything.
turning up the dial. It's like, whoop,
Yeah.
between 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock. Get buckle up, because it's coming for you. Whatever you're sending out, it's coming for you. So that would be really interesting to see if there is a pattern that she's, it's kind of like everybody wakes up in the morning. They have the morning routine and a pretty much consistent biorhythm,
Right.
circadian rhythm. Maybe Earth has an circadian rhythm that she's kind of, you know, doing at certain times, and I don't
Totally.
know. So let's go. I'm going to scroll down here, and this is evolving science. So we've already proven with Princeton University studies that we're
Right.
all connected. Now it's evolving. So these are the real time. So let's take a look here. Now this one, this one here on channel 2, this graph, it would hit 105 hertz, again, way into the gamma brainwaves, which is basically fifth dimensional consciousness and higher, or higher frequencies. The you know, but you have this huge chunk of red. What do you say about that?
Well, yeah,
It's like a
this is
bar.
that first one we were looking at. It looks at a sneak peek of the frequencies from like 0 to 15,000, like they said. And this one, you're looking in closer, you're looking between 0 and 100 hertz and what it's amplifying to and what it's doing. And it just looks like that whatever it is that happened, which we have been awaiting impact of coronal mass ejections. So for
Mhm.
me, this looks like it's on schedule. This
Oh, is it?
smack right here. Yeah. And it's like, this is what I've been waiting to see show up today. And this is what I'll be reporting probably after this on my blog and
Oh yeah,
go
this is the
post or
one.
whatever, be like, here it is, hope you feel okay. And
Yeah.
that's basically my support system now, like, here it is, sorry, and you're welcome. And yeah, so what is it that it's doing? Well, I can look at the decibel levels, and it looks like it's still hanging out around like a minus 40 decibel to,
Mm,
and then you can see there at the 50 hertz, it spikes all the way up to about a minus 20 decibel, or maybe minus 30. And that's
mhm,
happening all the time. That's their like TV sets and their electricity. And it's just hanging out just under the audible ear range all day at 50 hertz, which is just right below that gamma brainwave like sweet spot. So
mhm.
anything under that horizontal red line, that is more where our brains can be affected, I would say. And
Tuning
it's
in. Mhm.
clearly got loud, like all of
Yeah.
the brain waves in a way, pretty equally to the
Yeah.
the amplitude too. It looks like they were all
Right.
amplified to about the same level. So again, I think that's when we get that chance to pick our own adventure, like wherever your brainwave is at the time. It does get louder, but there's no other competing state that you have to like transition into because your environment is forcing you. It looks like the
Yeah.
environment just got really loud everywhere. And so if you were grumpy, then you got really, really mad.
Yeah, really
Or if
grumpy.
you were meditating, you were like really having a great
You're really
meditation with
having a lucid dream.
breakthroughs.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the potential's
Mhm.
there. And it, like you said, you get to pick what you're doing. You get to pick what
It's just a turning of the
conscious
dial. She's
experience.
just turning the dial up.
Right.
Whatever frequency you are, you're turning it up
Yes.
even more. So
So if you're
get your
super bored at work, you're going to
uh-huh.
be super, really, really upset about being bored at work.
You might get more homework.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's hilarious. That's it. But that is really good for people to understand.
Yeah.
When it comes to Earth's heartbeat is that when she does turn it up, like we're seeing in these live graphs, that
Right.
Russian and the Italian one, which is going way higher than 40 hertz, just letting it go however she wants.
Yeah. It shows much more.
Yeah, see, you have the red graph, and they also have a linear one here where you see a big blimp here, where it's really
Mm-hmm.
rocking. It makes it more important for people to get their house in order, for people to, address the little secret demons and issues that they have they've been carrying on, the baggage, because you can carry your baggage onto the higher dimensions of consciousness, but they're just gonna bring it up and amplify it. So deal with it. Deal with it.
Yeah.
Look around. There's a lot of resources to help you address those dense issues, learn from it, grow from it, so that what you have amplifying at these spikes when Earth dials it up is a lot of good stuff. Then you have a
Right.
different problem of how to balance your abundance.
Agreed. And that's
Yeah,
been a big part of the diary I've been
it
writing.
is.
Has been the struggles I've had to face during these times too, because I couldn't hide from them anymore. And things
Hmm.
I never expected, to the intensity too was not expected. The intensity of the experiences that you've or what's the word, repressed, now they come out with an even more intense experience than they would
Yep.
have in the original time. So if the
Yep.
more I can't even I can't even hide it anymore.
Oh
I've
yeah.
embarrassed myself multiple times, and I'm like, how can I not control myself anymore? And it's evidence of the times, like, of this shift, like the ancient cultures and so on have been telling us. And I lived through it. I lived through the 2012 transition and watched the world change, and it did. And I'm loving
And
watching
still,
it.
yeah, and it still is changing, but you
Totally.
want to do the dirty deeds, you're welcome to do the dirty deeds in these higher dimensions, but
No.
wait for it. I just sit back on the pod for like, oh, that was
Yeah.
interesting.
It
So,
happens. It happens fast too. You're like, oh, that
anyway,
was faster than expected too. Like,
yeah, it's welcome to the freak show. Um,
seriously.
so this is wonderful. So everybody goes to these websites. The links are in there, and they have a lot of different graphs and ways in which you can see
Right.
how how what's happening at the low hertz frequencies compared to the high hertz frequencies. I mean, she is really going above 100 hertz, 160 hertz. She's going to 300. The Italian one is very fascinating because they are measuring all the way up to 15,000 hertz. So anyways, lots of different lightning strikes. So they're measuring lightning strikes too. A lot of different
Yeah.
great material on the Italian one. So I'm checking that one ever so often. That will be fun.
Yeah.
But okay, so what are your thoughts on Earth's ascension so far in terms of the Schumann resonance? Because we've explained understanding what Earth's heartbeat is, how does it relate to us in consciousness, how do we create this reality through consciousness and the Earth? But before you were talking about they, as in these different corporate entities
Mhm.
putting satellites and technology up in the Earth's ionosphere or
Right.
outer space to try to kind of send certain signals, like to try to trigger a different frequency.
Right.
You know, what is the outcome? Because we know we have shown, looking at this data from these three different sites, that Earth's going to do what Earth's going to do.
Yeah.
Okay. And she's not always going to
Yes.
respond to your little peeking and probing. So she's going to do what she's going to do, and you're just going to have to deal with it. Um, However, there are satellites and companies, sending frequencies all over the place as well.
Right.
What is the intention of that? Because we kind of touched that a little bit, and this will kind of go into Earth's ascension as well. So we know Earth's ascending,
Mhm.
but what about humanity? So how does that relate to humanity as a group consciousness going with her?
Well, I read that the Schumann resonance was discovered again, basically rediscovered, I would say,
Mm,
pretty potentially by a German scientist in around the 20s or 30s. And that is a very important time of history and of technology and of the basically of who's ruling the earth in the human mind and who militarily has control or whatever. And
mm,
that's where most of the conspiracies that we're now hearing now have burst out of because of the discoveries they made during those years. And so the conspiracy in a way is that this technology was taken from even that time and used and experimented with back in the 20s and the 30s, and so far, and so much drama has unfolded since then of basically, I'm sure, certain forces and certain scientists all over the world basically trying to catch up with one another so they don't get microwaved or something, like from some ray gun, I don't know,
mm,
from space. And then there is the whole, like I said, the spiritual understanding too, that there's certain levels of the game where
mhm.
there is management and there is a bigger picture, and all of that stuff, I'm sure, was very much coming to the understanding back in the 20s and 30s. And I believe that what had happened potentially was an attempt to cull and shield and confuse our thought processes to
Mm.
avoid this inevitable spiritual awakening, this eventual cycle that was going to start and happen, because they didn't want to lose the control and power that was gained in that last cycle. And so
Right.
they used this
So like you're saying like
technology.
governments and corporations were at the
I would
time.
say so. Or
Okay.
I maybe even more so, I would go into who is it that's informing those bodies? Who
Media.
really
Okay.
is,
Mm,
well, that, and also family lineages that are
mm.
beyond, these structures, who own these structures and so
Right,
on.
right.
And what is their agenda for their flock of people and their slave race that they've built from generations of ruling over them? And like the British government, or even like the British family, like how many years of taxes has their people been paying them, and how many millions of people have been born under their rule, and all of this, like there's drama on those levels. And it got technological, and I believe that we're in the, I would say, in the recovery phase of what has
Mm,
happened potentially even back in the 20s and 30s, and we've been recovering from that, as well as riding this wave of the ascension and of this new cycle, or whatever we want to call it. There's plenty of names I've heard, and I've never had a solid understanding of it before I jumped into it as an adult. So I don't know, I see it as more
you're
of
doing
a
good. You're
extraneous,
doing good. Yeah.
like I get it. I feel like I understand it, and I've been preparing for it, and I'm excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm watching this repair process, and it does feel like, in a way, is connected to what they're doing to people in this as well, is dealing with them and helping their genetics evolve fast enough to keep up with the solar cycle of our sun. And so when it flares and blasts us, people aren't immobilized. They aren't able to do their jobs. And I'm watching it happen. I'm watching people not able to work. I'm watching people's lives change. And it's a good
Right.
thing. And it's also a new thing. And I'm trying to figure out, I
So
think they're trying to do
how
it
does this
slowly.
how does this you said so how does the current mRNA vaccine for COVID, how does that relate to what you were saying? Because I
I'm
could
s-
explain that.
Well, I mean, a lot of the stuff that woke me up early was that they were genetically modifying food, and that they
Mm-hmm.
were doing things with the water and
Mm-hmm.
with our air quality and for
Mm-hmm.
genetic manipulation. So
Mm-hmm.
it's potential that we were genetically manipulated in a certain way that was not good for us
Mm-hmm.
before now. And now, since the awakening has come all this way, the war of the good is returning, and we're needing to genetically modify people to get them back to their original blueprint, to get them back and activate their DNA in a proper way so they can be awakened and they can they can overcome the harm that happened to them when they were maybe given this as a baby. And for
Okay.
that's where I've come from. And
Right.
the fact that the name of it as well involves the sun itself, the name of the virus, which is why I was studying it previous, was like, the sun's going to do something to us. And then this happened. And I was like, well,
Right.
they named it after the sun. So that's very interesting to me. And now I'm watching them medicate people for it. And I wonder what's going to be the outcome. It may just allow them
Right.
to finally wake up, may them allow them to finally be in our environment safely. I don't know.
Right. Well, they have proven in science that DNA changes based off of light frequencies.
Right.
So they have shown certain frequencies of a salamander into like a chicken egg, and the chicken,
Right.
or I'm sorry, a chicken egg, yeah, a frog embryo
And the
frequency into a
salamanders.
chicken, yeah, into a salamander, and then it would be born with features like the frog, so and vice versa. So they have proven this in science that DNA codes are
From the light.
rewritten from the light. So the sun and earth frequency together, setting these higher frequencies, and all the beings living on her are going to be genetically affected
Right.
naturally.
Yes.
Naturally. So anything that we decide to do on our own, as humans, to try to manipulate DNA is far behind
Right.
Earth's natural frequency, that she's going up to 14,000 hertz, which is beautiful. So everybody's getting blasted, but how they adjust to the upgrade, that
Yes.
is to be determined. So that is an evolving science that we are watching, and I don't know. So
We'll
what do you
see.
so yeah, what, because there's people on them. So what do you recommend? Because I've done episodes where I'm speaking to doctors and other people where there is, like modified foods that are lowering your frequency because you're not as
Right.
at premium health. There is fluoride in the water, so your water is not filtered, and it's affecting your pineal gland and your frequency. The air quality, it maybe not as high in some areas, so that's affecting your frequency. So water, food, air, a lot of different things are affecting and lowering your frequency. And then some of the medication people take are maybe not as healthy for them,
Right.
and that could be lowering their frequency as well.
A ton.
And so, if they choose that, that's their personal decision as part of their pre-life plan. What do you say to people who they still live on Earth and they're still going to get her blast? So how are they going to adjust to this? What do you say for people?
To adjust to it in a more natural way is what you're
Yeah, just
thinking.
a healthy way instead of
Yeah.
just
I would say that we really are lucky. I would say we have it available. The medicine that we need is available to us still and is abundant around most of us, thankfully. If you're living in a city and you're on all paved land and there's no grass or there's no trees, then you're in the wrong place. And you definitely want to move out of there for that specific reason, because
to get
the
out of the cities.
get out of the cities, especially if
Well,
you're
when she does
struggling
those,
with
yeah, when she does those
tinnitus.
blasts.
Yeah, and I have a lot of clients too, especially who get into the older age range, like I'd say 40 and up. I've noticed a lot in their specific symptoms is tinnitus and a lot of ear ringing, and more so than necessary. And I've had to just be like, well, what does it happen when you're outside of your city? And they're like, no. And I'm like, then it's time to move or you're going to drive yourself crazy. And that's the ascension. Many of us have had to do a lot more to
Yeah.
adjust to the changes of our bodies and of
Mhm.
our environment and our sensitivities. And some people have the privilege, they have been working all their lives, have all their retirement saved up, and they're like, okay, and they move to an amazing house out in the outside of the city and they're fine.
Right. Right.
And they read
Yeah.
books and they better themselves every day, and they eat organic non-GMO food, and they drink proper filtered water and get their minerals, and they get their sunlight, and they get
Mhm.
their feet in the soil, they get to see the beach, they hug a tree, they have a garden. Those sort of things
Yeah.
keep people's basically their overall body electricity grounded into the earth's electric circuits, so
Mhm.
you don't get basically fried, because you're supposed to pass this on. Most of it is supposed to pass right
Yeah.
through you to the earth, and most of it's supposed to
Yeah.
pass right out of you to wherever, and the trees do it all day long. They're rooted in, they got their leaves out, and they're doing it. They're traversing this energy all
Right.
day long, no
Right.
problem. They don't look like they're struggling at all. And
Mm-hmm.
just be like the trees. If you're not feeling well, go do what the trees do, and you'll be okay. And don't come
Right.
back home until you feel better, basically, because
Yeah.
it's going to take as long as it needs to take for your system to reboot itself. And stay away from your devices too when you're doing it, because they have their own source that's not bioharmonic yet. But I'm assuming the technology we're going to be holding is going to have to be way more bioharmonic for us to continue wanting to use it, because it'll start frying your hand. And,
Mm-hmm.
and some people, it does happen to them and they can't use their devices. Some people have found there's tricks they can do to their device to make it bioharmonic with like little
Mm-hmm.
stickers and informing it on the quantum plane. And I've seen
Mm-hmm.
lots of stuff. There's lots of technology you can use. So yeah, just be like the trees is what I
Yeah.
say, and pay attention to your environment.
Yeah, and that's good. And not everybody can. The exodus out of the cities is not something that everybody can do. So
Absolutely.
if you happen to live in the city, and
Yep.
these high spikes are affecting the
Get a lot more
welfare
plants.
of the people, yeah, of the people, and they might start acting a little bit weird and stuff. Maybe take a break, go to the park or something.
Yeah.
But
I'll tell
it,
you.
it'll work itself. Well, is this what you're going to be discussing in the 2021 Higher Self Expo, or is there something else you're going to be
Yes.
discussing as well? So you are. Okay, more to come. So you guys look out for her in the 2021 Higher Self Expo. You just go to the website, which is higherselfexpo.com, and you can see her speaking engagement dates and sign up and watch her presentation on this. So she's going to go into a little bit more detail on the work that she's been doing so far. Fascinating work, Alexis.
Thank you.
And do you have one last message for the builders of the fifth dimension Earth?
I do. I would like to say thank you for taking great mindful consideration in everything that you build, so much that you will enjoy it just as much as the people you're building it for. And please don't forget about building the future generations and the children, because I know you may have been forgotten about as a child and maybe not have gotten the attention you needed, but you can transmute that by giving it back what you needed to the new generations, and they will give you so much more in return for that. And the true wealth of our planet is your bloodline and your children and your family, and to support them and what they're about to be bringing to the world, and invest in them more than any other businesses out there. Invest in them, and because they genuinely and on a spiritual, physical level have your best interest in mind in the evolution of your life too. So that's what I would recommend, is invest your energy and time into the next generations, because that relationship really needs to be mended on such a major level. And that's the connection to source too, because they were of the earth, they came out of you, they came from source newer than you did. They have so many more things to share with you and remind you of where you came from. And yeah, and then of course be respectful and supportive to those who've done so much ahead of you, to be there for them and listen to them and respect them, but also support them in areas of which, just like the children will shock us with what they're going to
Mm-hmm.
give us, we
Yeah.
have to, the elders have to be helpful and open up for us too, to give and let us shine and be bright and shiny and spurt out all these fun, amazing things that we've brought from the other side.
Yeah.
Because we want to help.
Very good message. Well, Alexis, thank you for your work in tracking Earth's and humanity's ascension frequency here on Spaceship Earth. For more
Yes.
information about Alexis of Ascension Diaries offerings, please visit her Instagram page, which is instagram.com/Ascension Diaries. And she covers it on a daily or, very, very periodic basis.
Yeah.
So if you want to continue to do this in real time, it's lots of fun to kind of track and learn and grow with her. So thank you kindly to our listeners for listening to another enlightening conversation. Until next time, blessings.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Merkaba Chakras, where we talk Buddhism in the 5th dimension. For more information about today's guest, please go to the show description. For more information about Vaughn's metaphysical work, please go to merkabachakras.com. The views expressed today are for entertainment purposes and do not necessarily reflect the views of the host or replace any medical or legal advice. Don't forget to subscribe for more interviews about the 5th dimension. Until we meet again, blessings.